Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of the new podcast, Steinway Hall, Emmett Fox and the 12 Steps. My name's Tina, and I'm from Idaho. And my guest today is Dave from Oregon. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Tina.
Okay, so I first heard about Emmett Fox while listening to Chuck Chamberlain's New Pair of Glasses recording. And in that very long recording, he recommended Emmett Fox's booklet, The Golden Key. So I searched for it and found it on Amazon and bought it. And since then, I've learned more about Emmett Fox. I'm going to read you a little bit from a man who lived in Hartford, Connecticut, Igor S. And this is what he says about Emmett Fox and Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the very early recovering alcoholics who worked with co-founder Bill Wilson was a man named Al, whose mother was secretary to Emmett Fox, a popular lecturer on New Thought philosophy. When the groups were meeting in New York, members would frequently adjourn after a meeting and go to Steinway Hall to listen to Fox's lecture. To this day, there are AA groups that distribute Fox's pamphlets along with conference approved AA literature. An account sets forth in Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers tells of the influence of Emmett Fox and his classic work, Sermon on the Mount. An AA old timer recollected. The first thing he, Dr. Bob, did was to get Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount. Once, when I was working on a woman in Cleveland, I called and asked him what to do for someone who is going into DTs. He told me to give her the medication, and he said, quote, when she comes out of it and she decides she wants to be a different woman, get her Drummond's The Greatest Thing in the World. Tell her to read it through every day for 30 days, and she'll be a different woman. Those were the three main books at the time, that and The Upper Room and Sermon on the Mount. Perhaps the fundamental contribution of Emmett Fox to Alcoholics Anonymous was the simplicity and power of Sermon on the Mount. This book sets forth the basic principles of the New Thought philosophy that God is the only power and that evil is insubstantial, that we form our own destiny by our thoughts and our beliefs, that conditions do not matter when we pray, that time and space and matter are human illusions, that there is a solution to every problem, that man is the child of God, and that God is perfect good. Central to New Thought philosophy was the perspective which saw that love and personal forgiveness were the keys to fundamental transformation. Love is by far the most important thing of all. It is the golden gate of paradise. Pray for understanding of love and meditate upon it daily. It casts out fear. It is the fulfilling of the law. It covers a multitude of sins. Love is absolutely invincible. Fox went on to say that forgiveness was an integral part of the pathway of love, which is open to everyone in all circumstances, and upon which you may step at any moment, at this moment, if you like. Requires no formal introduction, has no conditions whatever. It calls for no expensive laboratory in which to work because your own daily life and your ordinary daily surroundings are your laboratory. It needs no reference library, no professional training, no external apparatus of any kind. All it does need is that you should begin steadfastly to expel from your mentality every thought of personal condemnation. You must condemn a wrong action, but never the actor, of resentment for old injuries, and of everything which is contrary to the law of love. You must not allow yourself to hate either person or group or nation or anything whatever. You must build up by faithful daily exercise the true love consciousness. And then all the rest of spiritual development will follow upon that. Love will heal you. Love will illumine you. One of the cornerstones of Fox's philosophy was to live but one day at a time, to be responsible for one's own thoughts and to clear up resentments. Just as AA was to teach that resentments are our number one cause of slips, for Fox, one of the most important rules for growth was to live in the present, live in today, and do not allow yourself to live in the past under any pretense. Living the past means thinking about the past, rehearsing past events, especially if you do this with feeling. Train yourself to be a man or woman who lives one day at a time. You'll be surprised how rapidly conditions will change for the better when you approach this ideal. Emmet Fox emphasized the idea that thoughts are real things and that one cannot have one kind of mind and another kind of life. According to Fox, if we want to change our lives, then we must change our thoughts first. Many of his simply stated profundities have contributed to an AA philosophy that has transformed the lives of literally 2 million recovering alcoholics. And that was written a long time ago. So there are many more than that now. So what we're going to do today is go over Emmet Fox's The Golden Key. It's a little booklet. And I'm going to just read a couple of paragraphs, probably three. And then Dave and I will offer comments on what we see in this booklet and how it applies to 12-step recovery. The Golden Key. Scientific prayer will enable you sooner or later to get yourself or anyone else out of any difficulty on the face of the earth. It is the golden key to harmony and happiness. To those who have no acquaintance with the mightiest power in existence, this may appear to be a rash claim, but it needs only a fair trial to prove that. Without a shadow of doubt, it is a just one. You need take no one's word for it, and you should not. Simply try it for yourself and see. God is omnipotent and man in his image and likeness and has dominion over all things. This is the inspired teaching, and it is intended to be taken literally at its face value. Man means every man. And so the ability to draw on this power is not the special prerogative of the mystic or the saint, as is so often supposed, or even of the highly trained practitioner. Whoever you are, wherever you may be, the golden key to harmony is in your hand now. This is because in scientific prayer, it is God who works and not you. And so your particular limitations or weaknesses are of no account in the process. You are only the channel through which the divine action takes place. And your treatment will really be just the getting of yourself out of the way. Beginners often get startling results at the first time of trying. For all that is absolutely essential is to have an open mind and sufficient faith to try the experiment. Apart from that, you may hold any views on religion or none. Dave, would you care to offer any comments?
Thanks, Tina. Well, gosh, it sounds to me like this is all to do with what's going on inside your thoughts, inside your thinking. This idea of scientific prayer, what is that? That is simply praying instead of listening to your mind think. That is what I have come to understand through practice that scientific prayer is. And because the problem is our thoughts in and of themselves are pretty much powerless without any kind of connection with the what we in AA like to call the higher power, with God, as is referred to here by Emmet Fox. Without any connection to that, they are simply, what I like to think of as fiction, really. So what he's saying here is that, the inspired teaching intended to be taken literally is that we need to be talking to God, which is called prayer by any other word. That is what works. It is not my thinking that works. It is my connecting myself to the greatest power in the universe, is what Emmet Fox has called it. And we do that through not listening to our mind, but to focusing our mind on, for lack of a better word, talking to God, praying, rather than listening to ourselves think. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Dave. So I'm going to pull up that article or that that I just read, because there was something in that I really wanted to address. So just one moment. That was really important. So let's see here. Okay. All right. So in this lead-in that I read, what he says is that God is the only power, and that evil is insubstantial, that we form our own destiny by our thoughts and our beliefs, that conditions do not matter when we pray. The time and space and matter are human illusions, and there is a solution to every problem, that man is the child of God and God is perfect good. So what that brings up for me is that and in the big book it says God is everything or nothing. What is your choice to be? And so when I hear that, and I love that statement in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that means even things that look bad in my small perspective are still they're still part of God, in the sense that and we also learn in the big book that drinking is the great persuader. So you can substitute drinking with anything that we participate in that is bad for us. That God is actually, or good, or love, however you want to describe God, is actually in all of it. And that drinking being the great persuader means that it brings us to the point of reasonableness. First, it will kick our hiney, and then it will wake us up. Then it'll bring us to the truth. And so this belief in a power that's greater than ourselves, that encompasses all of it, good and things that look bad in our small perspective, is very important. And so the first section here in the Golden Key, scientific prayer will enable you sooner or later to get yourself or anyone else out of any difficulty on the face of the earth. It is the golden key to harmony and happiness. So if I were to practice this golden key, um, it would be, even with people that I'm concerned, that I love, that I'm concerned about, I can and do envision those people surrounded by love, surrounded by goodness, surrounded by a power greater than themselves that cares deeply about them. And that everything that's going on in everyone's life is being, it's hard for us to get to grasp this idea that God's in all of it, the good is in all of it, the love is in all of it. And it's all working toward good. And I also, it's also important here that we remember, and I think this is also from that thing that I read, that, let's see, that live in today and do not allow yourself to live in the past under any pretense. Living the past means thinking about the past, rehearsing the past, and train yourself to be a man or woman who lives one day at a time. So that's another big part of this golden key, is that we stay in now and we stay in reality. And we can choose this reality of good. We can choose this reality of believing that there's a power greater than ourselves that's omnipotent, and that cares about us all, and is always present. And Dave, I've actually heard you say this sometime, that God is working in everyone's life, in all of the details. I mean, it's not exactly this, to bring about the very best outcome for everyone involved. And that's what this first few paragraphs bring up for me. Do you have any more thoughts before we move on, Dave?
No, I'll just add the reference that you just made. This is the way I first heard it, and I've repeated it, and I think it matches up with Emmet Fox and with the big book, and that is everything is happening just as it should be, all the time, for all the right reasons. And the reason I believe that statement is true, even about the things that my mind thinks are bad, is because everything that's happening is in God's world, not in Dave's world, which is basically Dave's mind. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Okay, I think I did the first reading. Would you like to pick up where I left off and read a
Sure.
few paragraphs?
Okay, thank you. So Emmett Fox says, as for the actual method of working, like all fundamental things, it is simplicity itself. All that you have to do is this: stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. I think I would like to repeat that one more time. All you have to do is this: stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. This is the complete rule. And if you will only do this, the trouble, whatever it is, will presently disappear. It makes no difference what kind of trouble it is. It may be a big thing or a little thing. It may concern health or finances or a lawsuit or a quarrel or an accident or anything else conceivable. But whatever it is, just stop thinking about it. Think of God instead. That is all you have to do. The thing could not be simpler, could it? God Himself could scarcely have made it simpler, and yet it never fails to work when given a fair trial. I'm Dave again. I'm from Oregon, and I really love it when these writings, whether it be like here in Emmett Fox or in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, Turn from theoretical to practical. You know, when they give you instructions, okay, this is all great philosophy, you know, or whatever, but what do I actually do? And here it gives us the exact instruction for what we actually do. Stop thinking about whatever it is and start thinking about God instead. The corresponding sentence in the big book, which is really only 3 words, but it's the same concept. The 3 words in the big book are stop playing God or quit playing God. I think it is we had to quit playing God because that didn't work. That's the way the writers of the big book put it. So, so stop thinking about now. I think we can all relate to this. I certainly can. Stop thinking about the difficulty because what my mind is busy doing, and it works very, very rapidly when all I'm doing is thinking to myself about something, is it's going on and on and on, creating a fictional narrative about all the details, and half of it is made up. Uh, if I say this, then she's going to say that. Or if I do this, then she's going to feel that. Or if I make this choice, then these things will result. And I do this in making up stuff about the future, and I do this about ruminating about the past. And I add in all of these things that my mind is coming up with, and I'm obsessing. I'm thinking, thinking, thinking. And it says, stop doing that. What do we do if we're going to stop doing that? Do nothing? No, it gives us an alternative. Think about God instead. So now I'm talking to God. What does that sound like? I just shared with you what it sounds like when I'm listening to my mind talk to me. What about this and what about that? And I did this and she felt that and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What does it talking to God sound like? God, you know what? I'm just going to give this to you and you can have it and I'm going to let you take it and I will let it be what your will is for it. Whatever the situation is, the examples, he says health, finance, quarrels, accidents, we could add in there the word relationships with others, with people. Anything else conceivable, Emmett Fox says. Whatever it is, stop thinking about it. Think of God instead. Another thought that I could have, in addition to God, I'm going to give this to you, is God, I asked you for guidance and direction to be what you would have me be in this situation, in this relationship, in this circumstance. But it's what God's will is, not what my mind is trying to come up with, not what my mind is trying, because that is exhausting. Trying to rely on just finding the right sequence of thinking to make something work out, it's completely exhausting. Trusting and relying on the greatest power in the universe, which is obviously God, who could argue with that? That's the opposite of exhausting. I find I relax. I take it easy. I don't struggle. It gives me more time and more, I don't know, almost more energy to apply to what? To apply to what God would have me be in life, what God would have me be in a situation, what God would have me be in a relationship. And to quote Emmet again, the thing could not be simpler, could it? Quit treating my mind as if it's God. Stop thinking about whatever the thing is and start thinking of things like God, you can have this. And God, what would you have me do? I tend to switch from calamity to serenity, from awfulizing into peace with that one simple action. That's been my experience, but I'll tell you, in my experience, I have to practice it over and over and over and over again. It isn't just one time and then it's all better. It's I'm going to have to do it maybe, I don't have any idea, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 times today. But it never fails to work if we give it a fair trial. So it's practice, constant practice. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. So my thoughts on these paragraphs are that, we addicts, and I include, I'm not an alcoholic or a drug addict, but I am a codependent, an Al-Anon, a love addict, and we're people who can't quit. But what we can do is turn. So when I read this, I actually substitute the word or the idea of stopping to this idea of turning. So for those of us that work the 12 steps, we work the steps fast so that we can actually get to steps 10, 11, and 12, which is called the design for living, which is also known as the solution. And in step 10, part of that process is that we come up with new ideals for our own behavior. And we start practicing living from those new ideals. For an example of that might be, if I want to find myself wanting to get liked or wanting to get approval, the new ideal would be I am now just going to be looking for what would my higher power, and I always use this now. I use the idea of higher power, but when I started this work, I had to substitute love. What would love have me do in this instance? What would good have me do in this instance? What would kindness have me do in this instance? And those things are not synonymous with pleasing. It's not about what would make people happy. It's what would my higher power, what would love have me do? What would love have me be? What would honesty have me do and be? What would kindness have me do and be? So I'm really not a person who can stop. I have to turn. So when I get clear on what the turn looks like, what would I do in this situation if I were going to allow God, higher power, or love to direct me? And that's what I do. So, but it's also this idea of step 12, which is stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. For me, a person with a spiritual malady, it's stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and carry this message to the person who still suffers. That's what my next step is. It's how can I turn to give and to contribute? And the first place that I give and contribute is with other people who share the same spiritual sickness as me. So, and in the process of doing that, I learn what my higher power would have me be and do, and I practice it with those relationships with sponsees, proteges that are new. So I don't have all of this ancient history with them that I have with family members, and it's much easier to not be in my people pleasing, not be in my approval seeking, and to just be in strictly this business of being helpful and useful, even if people may not like it, even if they don't like when someone asks me to sponsor them, they're not asking me to please them. They're asking me to level with them. They're asking me to be honest with them. They're asking me to be a guide. So this is the first real relationship that I've ever had where I'm checking in with God before I do or say anything. And I'm asking that I be guided by honesty, by love, um, and by giving to give and caring to care, not to get something. And that begins to transform the way that I am in relationships. And then that kind of works backwards in my life. It starts going into relationships with family, with significant others, with my children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, this thinking about God instead is thinking about what would God have me be? What would God have me do? What would honesty have me be? What would truth have me be? What would love have me be? Not what would people pleasing have me be or do. What would principles have me be or do? What would the principles of truth and love and kindness and patience and tolerance have me be and do? And I start behaving out of principles instead of just this, constant motivation of trying to get my way, trying to get liked, trying to get loved, trying to get approval, trying to get attention, etc. And I start caring more about what God would have me be and do. And I'll pass. And I think you ended, Dave, with given a fair trial. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm going to pick it up from there. So do not try to form a picture of God, which is, of course, impossible. Work by rehearsing anything or everything that you know about God. God is wisdom, truth, inconceivable love. God is present everywhere, has infinite power, knows everything, and so on. It matters not how well you may think you understand these things. Go over them repeatedly, but you must stop thinking of the trouble, whatever it is. The rule is to think about God. And if you're thinking about your difficulty, you are not thinking about God. To be continually glancing over your shoulder, as it were, in order to see how matters are progressing is fatal because that is thinking of the trouble. And you must think of God and of nothing else. Your object is to drive the thought of the difficulty right out of your consciousness for a few minutes at least, substituting for it the thought of God. This is the crux of the whole thing. If you can become so absorbed in this consideration of the spiritual world that you really forget for a while all about the trouble concerning which you began to pray, you will presently find that you are safely and comfortably out of your difficulty, that your demonstration is made. So I'm Tina in Idaho, and so again, do not try to form a picture of God, which is of course impossible. Work by rehearsing everything and anything that you know about God. God is wisdom, truth, love. God is present everywhere, has infinite power, knows everything, and so on. So, and then it says, but you must stop thinking of the trouble, whatever it is, and the rule is to think about God. So again, I am not a person who can stop. I have to turn. So what I can do is I can turn to being helpful and useful. I can turn to reach out and go to a CODA meeting and offer to sponsor and work with others. Almost every morning, I am working with someone that I sponsor. And this is how I do this action of turning, of trying to give and care to care. And that's how I repeatedly, it's the actions that have me repeatedly going over this. I repeatedly, literally go over this again and again and again with the people that I sponsor. So I'm no longer spinning in problem. I'm actually taking action in solution. and seeking to be helpful and useful, which is really brand new for a lot of us. We've been so absorbed in how we can arrange life to suit us, how we can get things to go our way. This is a whole new landscape for us. This living in what can I contribute? How can I be helpful? And it says, but you must stop thinking of the trouble, whatever it is. The rule is to think about God. If you're not thinking about if you're thinking about your difficulty, you're not thinking about God. So again, I'm not a person who can quit or stop, but I just have to keep doing these new things that I'm practicing, that the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous describes as this design for living, steps 10, 11, and 12, mostly 12. 12 is what transforms us, this getting out of ourselves, getting out of our thinking, and seeking to be helpful and useful to others is the action for those of us that want to quit and can't. So that's how I actually live in these thoughts of God and live in these thoughts of love and live in these thoughts of give. And that action is what drives the thoughts out of my consciousness because I'm not on that same track. It's like, when you're on a railroad track and the people up in the ahead have turned the track, so they've moved it, so it's on another track. And when I'm on that other track, I'm not on that old track of thinking about me, and what I want. I'm thinking about how I can be helpful. What would God have me be and do to be helpful to these people? And I forget about the trouble that I was previously obsessed with because it's no longer occupying my mind. It isn't scaring me anymore because I know my solutions are no longer trying to dissect things down to the teeny tiniest thing. That is all left for higher power. There's a promise in the Big Book that says that I'm not going to be able to. Oh, here, I have it right here. Let me read it. It says that when we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. So that's the changing of the track. And that new track is, where can I give? Where can I contribute? Where can I love? And another example is when I go to sleep at night, and if I'm worried about somebody that I care about, I can just envision them, and I do just envision them surrounded by love and light, and know that God is everything or nothing, that good is everything or nothing, even things that look bad from my small perspective, that God loves these people more than I could ever dream of loving these people and has a perfect plan for all of us. And the perfect plan for me included hitting a horrible bottom and coming to a place where I became humble and teachable and willing. And I'm going to stop there. Dave, do you have any thoughts about those words?
Thanks, Tina. That first paragraph gives us instruction to rehearse anything or everything you know about God instead of listening to yourself think. And what that looks like for me, this is just my practice, is uh, thinking about things, turning my thinking to things associated with God or that I associate with God. Okay, so what are those things? The quickest and easiest one for me is nature. Uh, Sunshine, rain, wind, uh, plants, animals, the feeling of being out in nature, people or animals. It's all in God's universe. It's all in God's world. So turning my thoughts to the truth, turning my thoughts to the reality of God's universe as manifested here on planet Earth is really a helpful practice to me. God is present everywhere, is what Emmett Fox wrote. Has infinite power, knows everything, and so on. So, turning my attention to those things instead of the obsessing that's going on in my mind about whatever financial or relational thing it uh, is a really helpful turn. It's a really helpful practice. You must stop thinking about the trouble, whatever it is, and instead think about God. And then he goes on to say, don't uh, think of the trouble and look over your shoulder to see how things are progressing. Okay, that's an obvious metaphor to checking up to see, okay, now what progress is God making on this now that I'm thinking about God, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the problem. The problem is if I practice thinking about things, then when something new comes up, whatever it is, a piece of news comes up, somebody says something to me, something takes place, an event in front of me. Uh, the first thing I do, because it is my constant habit to do it, is to go to thinking about it. And that, for me, results typically in a very poor reaction. I tend to exaggerate, dramatize. The word might be awfulize often, particularly if it's a problem of some type. Uh, I imagine things about whatever the problem is. Uh, I make a bigger deal about the news than what's actual or real. That is looking over my shoulder to see how things are going to be progressing. And here it says that is fatal because I'm thinking of the trouble. So instead, if we're going to have this solution, I just must think about God and nothing else. Because when I think about God, as he predicts, as Emmett Fox predicts, it drives the thought of the difficulty out of my consciousness, and my reaction changes. It's different. It's not dramatizing, it's not awfulizing, it's not projecting, as the case may be, imagining fictionally about things. It is okay. Here's another thing that's come up in God's world. It's actual, it's true, it's real, it's, happening. And God has good things in mind with this. God has good things in mind for me. God has good things in mind for the other person. God has good things in mind for the situation. The only thing that's bad is what my mind is doing with it. It's not bad that the thing is present. What's bad is what my mind is doing with the thing. So if I turn to thinking about God, I can turn to thinking about, whew, yeah, God's world is here all the time, every day. It includes this thing too, whatever this thing is. All the while, the trouble about which I'm beginning to pray will presently, I'll be safe. I'll eventually be comfortably out of the difficulty. I'm making my demonstration that it is part of God's world and I trust God with it. Again, simple. And rather than be exhausted by it, I could choose, if I choose to turn, to relax with it. And with that, I'll pass. Tina, did you have any other comments about this?
I do not.
Okay,
Your
I'm going to
turn.
keep reading if that's okay.
Yep.
And I'll read three paragraphs just because I was looking at them and I think the next three fit together. Uh, so, in order to, and it has quotes around this, to golden key a troublesome person or a difficult situation, think the following words. Now I am going to golden key John, or I'm going to golden key Mary, or I'm going to golden key whatever the threat and danger is. Then proceed to drive all thoughts of John or Mary or the danger right out of your mind and replace it by the thought of God. By working in this way about a person, you are not seeking to influence his or her conduct in any way, except that you prevent them from injuring or annoying you. And you do nothing but good for them. Thereafter, the person is certain to be, in some degree, a better, wiser, and more spiritual person just because you have golden keyed them. A pending lawsuit or another difficulty would probably fade out harmlessly without coming to a crisis, justice being done to all parties concerned. If you find that you can do this very quickly, you may repeat the operation several times a day with intervals in between. Be sure, however, that each time you have done it, that you drop all thought of the matter until the next time. This is important. Uh, Again, I'm Dave. I'm from Oregon. I have to say that I don't really have the habit of thinking these words. This book is reminding me of them, but it's not a practice I'm in a good habit of. Oh, I'm going to golden key this. Uh, but basically, what it does, the words golden key it, is remind me this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop thinking about it, whatever it is. Could be a person, could be a circumstance, could be a situation, could be an activity that happened, a danger, as it says here. I'm going to stop thinking about that. I'm going to drive all thoughts of that out, and I'm going to replace it by the thought of God. That's what golden keying it means. And I love that this paragraph, these two paragraphs, bring up the several times a day example because that is what it is for me. And that's my experience of it. Okay, I did it a minute ago, and then the thought of it is going to come up again this hour, and probably next hour, and then probably the third hour, and probably the fourth hour. And by the way, I will just add from the practice of working the 12 steps in recovery that it might not hurt if you find yourself with those same set of thoughts about a person or a situation coming up for the 15th time in the same day or two, that it might be 10th step time. That's one of the instructions that we get in working the steps. But setting the 10th step aside, basically what he's saying is think about God instead of the thing, go about your day, and then it's going to come up again, and you just repeat the same process. Repeat it every time the thoughts come up. For me, they're guaranteed almost. If it's a significant thing at all, they're guaranteed to come up again, and then again, and then again. And all we do is just drop the thought of the matter and think of God until the next time the thought of the matter comes up. And then we drop it and we think of God again. Emmet Fox says this is super important to repeat the process many times each day as necessary. And I really benefit if I will do that. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. This is Tina in Idaho. And this was so helpful to me when I first read it years and years ago. Um, I I do it a little differently now. I've incorporated this golden keying into my morning meditation. I really like the way Sandy Beach describes a similar phenomena where he talks about if you're struggling with a problem, you give it to God, um, and completely trust that if there's something for you to do about it, that you are going to get. It talks in the big book on page 87 about cultivating, 86 and 87 about cultivating this intuitive connection to our higher power, that when you don't quite know how to handle something or there's a difficult situation, we turn it over to our higher power. And he talks about then go to a movie. And what you're going to notice is in the middle of that movie, once you've really given it to your higher power, all of a sudden, doodle-doo, a completely formed idea will pop into your head. We cultivate this intuitive connection to our higher power. And we start beginning to trust this process. Now I do this in my morning meditation all of the time. I have this, after I do the third step prayer, I have this section that says, thank you for your guidance around. And then I just make a little bullet list of all of the things I'm not quite sure how to handle. And I completely trust that when the time is right, my higher power will give me an intuitive thought around those things. In the interim, I really like the idea of a kid's piggy bank, the piggy banks that kids used to have sometimes were piggy banks where you could put money in, but you couldn't take the money out. In order to get the money out, you had to smash it open with a hammer. That's and so that idea, and then I heard it described as a concept of a God box, where you have a box that has a way to put something in, a little problem written on a piece of paper, but there's no way to get it out. And so this idea is that we're cultivating this connection with our higher power. We're completely trusting that when the time is right for us to take action on something, we are going to get guidance. And so that becomes this, it started being my first connection to my higher power, actually, just this daily practice of writing down things I was not sure how to handle with different people or different events, situations, and then noticing how the things that I wasn't supposed to be doing about anything about would fade as time passed, and the things I was supposed to be doing something about, when I wasn't busy trying to, squeeze the answer out of thin air. If I was going on to my life and doing the things I did know how to do that day, I would get an intuitive thought would just pop fully formed into my mind about those things. And that started my spiritual awakening. In the beginning of working my 12 steps, I just believed in the 12 steps themselves. I knew that they had saved countless lives. I didn't really have a relationship with a higher power, didn't know if I wanted a relationship with a higher power, but I did have this belief in the concept of love, that God is good. All of these things it says on that prior period. God is wisdom, truth, inconceivable love, is present everywhere, has infinite power, knows everything, and so on. I could believe in that the concept of God is love, but I didn't really have this deep relationship with a higher power. And it started by this practice of turning over, golden keying, if you want to refer to it as that, these things that I didn't know how to handle, or these in relationships where I wasn't really sure, how to proceed or what to do. And that became a very big spiritual awakening for me. I started to see that, and it started being like thrilling and interesting, because then after all of the little petty crap ran its course about people, what started happening was I started to get these ideas of how I could be more helpful, like this very thing that we're doing right now, this idea about Steinway Hall and how the AAs used to go to Steinway Hall to listen to Emmett Fox. And I had this intuitive thought about Steinway Hall, and let's talk about these authors like Emmett Fox and others, and what they offer us. So it's kind of opened up this whole area of my life where higher power is trying to create with me. One of the things it says in the 12 and 12 is that we are intelligent agents of God's ever expanding creation, that we are meant to be co-creators with God. And if we get ourselves and our little fears and our little small plans and ideas out of the way, there are some really amazing things and some great work that we can, work hand in hand in with our higher power and other fellows. Let's see. So, is there anything else? I think that's all I have. Do you have anything you want to add, Dave?
No, I don't have anything additional. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to go on and read the remaining paragraphs. So, we have said that the golden key is simple, and so it is. But of course, it's not always easy to turn. There's that word, turn. If you are very frightened or worried, it may be difficult at first to get your thoughts away from material things. But by constantly repeating some statement of absolute truth that appeals to you, such as there is no power but God, or I am the child of God, filled and surrounded by the perfect peace of God, or God is love, or God is guiding me now, or perhaps best and simplest of all, God is with me. However mechanical or dead it may seem at first, you will soon find that the treatment has begun to take and that your mind is clearing. Do not struggle violently. Be quiet but insistent. Each time you find your attention wandering, just switch it straight back to God. Do not think, do not try to think out in advance what the solution of your difficulty will probably turn out to be. That is technically called outlining and will only delay the demonstration. Leave the question of ways and means strictly to God. You want to get out of your difficulty, that is sufficient. You do your half. God will never fail to do his. I'm Tina from Idaho, and my comments about that are, I was just mentioning my daily morning routine about jotting things down I don't quite know how to handle. This thing about, I like how it says, God is guiding me now. So, and do not struggle violently. That has actually become um, a reality in my life. I was struggling violently when I hit my bottom. I was in my head all of the time, thinking, and it was very painful. And now I have peace in my life for the most part. And I completely trust that, I am not God anymore. I know that I am this intelligent agent and I get to participate in this, expanding God's ever expanding universe, but I am not the director. I get to shrink back down to right size and play my part in this big production of God's. And, what can I bring that would be helpful? What can I bring that would be useful? What can I bring that would model God? All of these words that we just talked about a couple pages back. God is all of these wonderful words: wisdom, truth, inconceivable love, present everywhere, knows everything, and so on. Um, and um, and I like, do not try to think out in advance what the solution of your difficulty will probably be. turn out to be. This is technically called outlining. So, so yeah, and what's happened to me in this doing this process in the mornings is that it's just become a joy. Once I write it down, it's like I'm done with it. I'm released. And I know that if I need to be doing anything else, I'm going to get that intuitive thought and it's going to be fully formed. That's what another thing that Sandy Beach said is it will be fully formed. Oh, okay, this is the next step. Oh, okay, this is the next step. And of course, it's always going to be in now and it's always going to be in reality. If I'm back in the past, I am always going to be without my higher power. If I am in the future, I'm always going to be without my higher power. If I'm making up a story or reading minds, ever, if I am ever making up that I think I know what's in somebody else's mind, then I am without my higher power. So my life becomes super simple and has become super simple. And my anxiety level has shrinked dramatically. It has gone from constant obsession and constant struggle to is promised in the big book of happy, joyous, and free. And I'll pass. Dave?
Thanks, Tina. Uh, yeah, the first paragraph really talks about simple but not easy. We see those words in other places in the program of recovery in the big book. Um, it's a simple golden key. Stop thinking about the person or the issue. Start thinking about God. That sounds simple. The not easy part is that the mind, and a lot of references refer to mind as ego. So I'll call it ego for a minute. The ego is very insistent. It absolutely reasserts itself over and over and over again. All day, when you're lying awake in the middle of the night, the ego is going to assert itself. And the way it's going to assert itself is through your mind, as if your mind is talking to you. And so the instruction here is turn your thought to something, anything other than that. And it gives us some examples, some simple examples. I personally recommend the simpler, the better. Uh, God is love, or God is with me. Anything that actually makes the turn. That is the key right there, to actually make the turn from listening to the ego or the mind to making a statement that acknowledges the truth and the presence of God. And in that moment, in that turn, what happens is you establish or reestablish a connection that's already there and always there. You're just recognizing that it's there. And B, you're reestablishing power. Because if you're listening to ego or mind, it has the power. You're giving it the power. It doesn't have any actual power in the world, but it has power over you. As soon as you make the turn, you're taking your power back. What's the source of the power? Your connection with your creator, your connection with God as you understand God. That is where you take your power back. And that last paragraph uses the word outlining in quotes. I think we all really know what outlining is. I certainly do. Outlining is either replaying or pre-playing what's going to happen. I think we all have the experience, I constantly do, of, well, not quite constantly anymore. Used to be constantly for me. But frequently, put it that way, I frequently have the experience of holding a conversation inside my head where I'm talking to somebody who's not present or not there. This conversation's taking place. Statement A, statement B, I'm talking to something or somebody that isn't literally present with me in the room or in the place or whatever. That is outlining. Or I'm busy thinking about, okay, I'm going to do this first and this second and this third and this fourth, or I'm going to do this and then that's going to take place and then I'll respond this way and then that. That is all outlining. And again, it is a completely exhausting thing. And you know why it doesn't work? Because I have absolutely zero control or zero power over anything outside of myself that's involved in that process. Yeah, I can, plan out what my first statement's going to be or whatever. But if I'm, you know, in a situation with a human being, person, I don't have any control over what that person's going to do or say or think or feel or what the next thing they're going to do is. So outlining, which is pre-planning, anticipating, et cetera, is completely useless. And it's exhausting. And we replay it over and over and over. Okay, I'm going to have option B and option C and option D and option E. It only delays the demonstration of the power of our connection to God. And so it says here, leave the question of the ways and means, which is how things are actually going to play out, what's actually going to happen, strictly to God. You want to get out of your difficulty. That is the only thing, and that is all that is sufficient. If you do your half, what is your half? Pre-plan? Rehearse? Figure it out? No, none of those things. Your half is quit thinking about whatever it is, quit rehearsing whatever it is, quit outlining whatever it is, and turn to God is real, God is true, God is with me. Here is evidence of God. Just look at that wind blowing or the sun shining or whatever your connection to God is that happens to be helpful to me, whatever your practices is that are helpful to you to remind you of the truth of God. That is your half. God will never fail to do his half, it says. Wow, is that a relief? That is so incredibly reassuring. It is so incredibly helpful. And with that practice, relax, take it easy, don't struggle, simply be helpful and useful where we can be, simply focus our attention on our relationship with God and trust that God will do through us what God's will is. And difficulty seems to go away. Now, we have to make sure we don't think it has to go away in our time. It's going to go away in God's time. Maybe that's going to be in the next hour, or maybe it's going to be in the next week, or maybe it's going to take a month, but that's God's business. That's not my mind's business. Uh, with that, I'll pass. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave. So thank you all for joining us in our first episode of Steinway Hall, Emmet Fox, and the 12 Steps. We will be back again soon and hope you will join us.
Thank you, Tina.
Thanks, Dave.